Myth number 1. The atomic bombings made Japan surrender. 3 months after Germany surrendered, the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which made Japan surrender, and that is how the story ends. Many people learn about World War II that way, that the atomic bombs made Japan surrender, but it just wasn't. Although the A-bombs did significant destruction and proved it as a big threat, it was not the main reason why Japan surrendered. Even way before the atomic bombings, the Japanese government and the emperor wanted and was seeking a surrender, although the Japanese military insisted and wanted the war to go on.
I can't believe we had a losing streak against the US. You guys are at rush. Chill bro. We will get them next time.
Japan had already discussed terms of conditional surrender before the bombings, although the conditions were rejected because the conditions were not very much agreeable for the Allies, though they did know about Japan's intention to surrender. Japan had already lost almost all capabilities to sustain their war effort. Japan's economy was in shambles and the government was struggling to feed its population. They would have eventually succumbed anyway. And another reason which played a role as big as the A-bombs was the Soviet invasion. The Soviet Union declared war on Japan, ready to mobilize more than 1.5 million troops. They started their invasion on the 9th of August and advanced rapidly through Manchuria. The news about the Soviet invasion reached Tokyo at the same time as the Nagasaki bombing.
Come on, we already tanked those Tokyo bombs like it was nothing. We can easily tank these A-bombs.
I just hope A second A-bomb won't hit us. Yes. さあ、セカンドはボム just hit us.
しといやそくく。
Now, my last hope is that the Soviets won't invade us. Yes. Who's there?
When they found out they had to fight a big-ass army in another front, they knew their fate was sealed. Myth number 2. The total death count of the Holocaust was 6 million. The 6 million figure is only the number of Jewish death counts, but the Jews were not the only targets of the Holocaust. It targeted anyone the Nazis didn't like political oppositions, Soviet prisoners of war, Roma gypsies, Poles, homosexuals, and Serbs. With all of them included, the Holocaust casualties go significantly bigger. We can't have exact numbers, but historians put the total death count of the Holocaust to be between the range of 15 to 20 millions. Myth number 3. The atomic bombings were the most destructive bombings of the war. The atomic bombings did kill a lot of people and caused a lot of destruction. But the atomic bombs did stole the show of being the most destructive bombing, maybe because it brought a new form of mass destruction. They were like, haven't you seen how deadly were the A-bombs? Conventional bombings are so last season. The firebombing of Tokyo is the most destructive bombing rate in history. It was made worse by the recent invention of napalm. Over 500,000 cylinders of napalm were dropped. According to estimates, over 100,000 civilians burned to death in a single night, with 1 million injured and 1 million more made homeless. Myth number 4. The D-Day was the turning point of the war. I'm not trying to bring down the effort and sacrifices made for the D-Day, but saying something like the Allies made a big comeback in the D-Day is not kinda true. The real turning point was when Hitler confronted a guy with a cooler mustache. When the D-Day happened, the Germans were already on their way to defeat. Myth number 5. America stayed out of the war until Pearl Harbor attack. The US was just chilling and did not give a fuck about the war until the Pearl Harbor attack is not true. They were always low-key rooting for their allies. Plus, they had made the Lend-Lease Act way before the Pearl Harbor attack, which sent today's equivalent of $659 billion worth of supplies to their allies for fighting the war. Myth number 6. The Allies were the good guys. I think this is the biggest myth about World War II that people still believe in, that it was a good guys versus bad guys war. In many schools and history books, they emphasize on the atrocities done by the Axis, while completely erasing the horrible things also done by the Allies. Sure, the Axis were evil, but the Allies also did horrible things to their enemies. During the Soviet invasion into Germany, the Soviets committed possibly the biggest mass rape in history. The Western Allies' invasion was less extreme, but many of their airbombing campaigns, like one in Dresden and many others, were to target the civilians rather than military goals. And as I've mentioned, the American firebombing on Tokyo, where 100,000 civilians burned to death, and not to forget the atomic bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Myth number 7. Axis soldiers never set foot on American soil. Many don't seem to realize, but during World War II, over 400,000 Axis soldiers set foot on American soil. But luckily, those Axis soldiers are prisoners of war. They were taken to America because their European allies did not have enough rooms for them anymore. But the living conditions were pretty good compared to other country prisons in that time, where starved prisoners were forced to labor all day. One prisoner even said that those American prisons were a golden cage. Myth number 8. The Germans were fully mechanized force. If you're a World War II nerd like me, who just likes to go to YouTube and search something like World War II German military footage, then you'll see the German military being full of motorized and mechanized forces in those footages. But it really wasn't. This is just another propaganda from the Nazi Minister of Capping to make the German military look big and scary. Out of the 135 German military divisions in 1940, only 16 of them were mechanized, while the remaining 113 divisions were on foot or using horse or a cart.